here with Chris Hinshaw, and you said you were on your way back from your workout when you text me. What was today's workout?
So the workout combination that we did was I'm into these workouts lately that create a significant amount of fatigue, and then we do what we call an active recovery. And I know that a lot of people think that an active recovery is, an hour-long row or a mile swim in the pool. And an active recovery really is a movement that sole purpose really is to clear the fatigue, ideally from a similar movement pattern that just created the fatigue. And so what we were doing was a workout that was a combination of ring rows and ring push-ups, very high intensity, very fatigue driven. And then what we did is arms only recovery on the assault bike. So we did a multiple, 10-round workout, essentially creating fatigue in the push and the pull, and then clearing fatigue on the assault bike with just arms only.
Now you say you work out with some of the best athletes in the world. Who were you working out beside today?
No, so today it was just really me and just a couple of people in the gym just tinkering around. I mean, part of this programming methodology is something that I've been playing around with Dave Durrani, who's, an Olympian gymnast, and Chad Vaughn, an Olympian weightlifter. And we've been playing around with these workouts to build capacity. And part of it is if you're always doing things with the elites, you get jaded in the sense of almost the impossible seems possible. And you need to always stay grounded. And I mean, I like to experiment with the elites, but some of the things that they do, it's not even in the same stratosphere of really the general CrossFit enthusiast.
Yeah, and being on Watt on the Waves with you, that was my first exposure to clearing fatigue. And it's brutal, first of all, for those listening that have never done it. And we'll talk about how they can learn more from you as we go on. But that was some of the best stuff I learned on the entire trip. Took it back, immediately started implementing myself. And something you said about the games athletes, I'm listening to a book called Fooled by Randomness. I don't know if you've heard of it. And it's a lot about how we kind of get lost in these statistics because of the way people are presenting them. And I think a lot of CrossFitters are guilty of it too, just even in the box, forgetting how healthy and how fit they are because they're only comparing themselves to other CrossFitters.
Right.
And it's probably the same for you. If you're only working out beside a Rich Froning, you're like, I'm a really bad athlete, but you're comparing yourself to the best in the world. Now,
me.
You good there, Chris?
Yeah. It just said.
There we go. You're back. You're there.
Yeah.
We're good.
Okay.
The Wi-Fi's all right?
Yeah, mine's beautiful.
So let me ask you this. You have a very unique background in the sense that before CrossFit, before coaching, you were involved in sales.
Yes, I was. Yeah. Good 25 years in sales. Yeah, now, in Silicon Valley.
So you were in the heart of it. You're in California selling. And what were you selling? Oranges?
No, electronics. So the last position I had 4 years, I was the director of business development on the western portion of the U.S. It was a $600 million company based out of London. We had about 10,000 people. And what we made were cable assemblies and power cords. And so for example, the cord that goes into your iPhone. So this plug and then the wall adapter we made. So that was an account. Matter of fact, the year that I left that job, we sold 220 million of those cords to Apple.
So you left, I mean, what year did you leave? That must have been in the early 2000s then, if Apple was already around making cords.
No, so I left that job and moved into coaching full-time in the CrossFit space. So that was, I want to say July of 2015.
Oh, so you were involved in sales for up until somewhat recently then.
I actually had a full-time job while coaching for free. And I was traveling for that job around the world just for the responsibilities that I had, the accounts that I had while coaching in the CrossFit space. So I guess CrossFit would have been considered my hobby. But I was really actually doing things because I loved it, and I was trying to repay what CrossFit gave me back. I mean, I got into CrossFit to restore my health from, my triathlon days. And when you age, your family and your friends and your health is your top priority. And for me to get my health back, I felt like, you know what, if I have some knowledge and some experience that can improve the sport of CrossFit, making adaptations more efficient and effective, then I would like to contribute my know-how. And it really came from the space of gratitude. And so that's why I did it for free for the longest time.
So, I mean, you went from being the best in the world at your sport to completely out of coaching and out of the sport and part of the, 9 to 5 world.
Yeah, I was, it's interesting, as you age, you get sucked into this belief that the American dream is, we got to get married, we got to go into debt, and we have to have a job. And what happens, and then of course, when those things get difficult, it's time to have a couple of kids. And what's interesting about that is that you never really are looking at yourself. You're just saying, okay, I guess it's time to quote, grow up. What's interesting for me is that, that I went through that lifestyle, and, the kids go off into college, and then I'm sitting there and it's like, well, do I really need to be in this position anymore where I've got a job that I am really good at it, but I wasn't passionate about it. And what I was passionate about was CrossFit and what I was doing within the space in terms of coaching and helping others. And it took a lot of courage to just get up and go, after 25 years. I was talking with Jason Khalifa, and he was one of the original athletes. And he told me, he's like, look, I know you think that you can pull off both things at the same time. And he says, but I know the real reason is because you're just afraid that if it doesn't work out, that you made a bad choice. And he says, you got to trust yourself that, if you could dedicate all of your time to coaching, you've got to trust that you're actually going to not only be good at it, but you'll be able to develop a business, and you'll be able to develop a successful business. And when you're making those decisions of leaving a job, and, I was very well paid to basically, start from scratch, that's a dicey time, especially when you're, in your late 40s, early 50s.
So without getting into numbers, would you define yourself as more successful then or now?
It's interesting. So I made a lot of money back then, lived in Silicon Valley, lived in the same town that Facebook's in. And because you are working, 70, 80 hours a week, you make up for that by spending more money. You try and find happiness, to restore that pump in spending. And so although you make more money, you spend more money. We actually moved to Cookville, Tennessee a year and a half ago. And the lifestyle out here is completely different than that of Northern California. But in terms of overall happiness and success, it is significantly greater now than it was at the peak of my sales career.
And you're married, correct?
No, just with same person. Yeah, for 10 years now.
So
Yeah. Yeah. My better half, Heidi,
is your relationship better now because of that?
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that happened was that CrossFit, interestingly enough, as soon as I left my job, that was after the 2015 games. Um, about 4 months later, I was approached by CrossFit HQ to partner up with my aerobic capacity course that I was just doing on the side. I'd been doing that course for a year and a half prior. And when CrossFit came in and wanted a lot of structure associated, they want a certain number of courses per year, it turned into a whole separate business. And so Heidi actually runs that entire business. What I do is I give all the seminars, I go to all of the clinics, I teach all of the classes, but she manages all aspects of that business. And so she was able to leave her business as a result, which allows us to essentially travel and hang out together, which is, I mean, that's one of the reasons why, you know, if we're talking about happiness, that the fact, I mean, we get along, and she's without a doubt my best friend, and to be able to do that and travel and share health and fitness, I mean, that's a dream.
You know, for all the bad talk CrossFit does get from the, people out there, it's like stories like that, two people that have left their job, created a new business, and get to live happier. It's pretty amazing. And we'll talk about the changes to the preferred courses in a minute, but Cookville's become the Mecca, right? Cookville is where you need to go. I mean, who's there now? Aside from you, it's Rich, Tia, Frazier. Is Josh Bridges there? I mean,
he's got a piece of property, but I mean, Roy McKernan's moving here in 2 weeks. I mean, you got Angelo DeChico, you got Nick Palladino, Haley Adams. Haley Adams actually lives in our house.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Asia Persevich, just, she's what, 20th in the world. Yeah. China Cho's here right now. Mackenzie Riley's here right now.
I mean, it's the old school, Venice Beach of bodybuilding, basically. Cookville is where you have to go to be. Does that make it more enjoyable just to be around these amazing athletes?
What makes it really enjoyable for me is that they push me as a coach. Their expectations are extremely high. They're not looking for workouts for the sake of workouts. They're looking for something that's creative, it's innovative, that it has purpose, that it's more precise, and that has that's helped me evolve as a coach. Part of what I recognize is that I learn a lot from athletes, a lot, not in terms of just sampling and testing of workouts, but just the things through observation that people are able to do. And by having a larger population here in town, you see patterns of behavior, you see patterns of performance. If I was remotely working with them, or if it was just one athlete here, you may just think of that as an anomaly. But I have a huge luxury by seeing patterns because of that volume, that larger sample size. That was something that actually I learned from Glassman early on. I've known Coach for a long time, and one of the things that I learned was, he had a fitness methodology too back in the day, and him and his wife, at that time, Lauren, put it up online and put workouts out there for free, and people came by the hundreds and the thousands and the tens of thousands, and that compressed his learning curve. And that's really important, to shrink the amount of time to learn what works and what doesn't work. And that's important for the sport. I mean, it's a brand new sport, and it's a population within that sport that has never truly been tested. This middle population, this recreational athlete, this general fitness enthusiast.
Well, what benefits was your career in sales to your current position as coach? I mean, you're 25 years in Silicon Valley. How did that benefit you?
So in selling, what you're really doing is that you're taking a certain situation with a unknown set of variables, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to convince somebody that your offerings have value, that they have merit, that it will assist them. And in sales, you can pitch it in a number of ways. Price points. You can pitch it in terms of quality. You can pitch it in terms of all other source, right, on-time delivery, all other types of deliverables that companies find of value. And before that, when I was an athlete, I represented myself. When I was doing the sport of triathlons, and I raced, professionally for 8 years, and so my product was myself. And that skill of pitching yourself as a product or another tangible product is a skill. And I think that's one of the reasons why the aerobic capacity course has been so successful, is because I realize the people showing up are coming there for an experience. They want to be entertained, but their primary purpose is that they want to get knowledge. And I think from coming into those seminars from a sales background, I'm able to relate to the broad spectrum of people that show up. What I mean by that is we have everybody from zero education to PhDs in exercise physiology, from non-CrossFit athletes all the way to CrossFit Games champions. And you have to provide value across the board. And that is a skill. That's a skill that took me, 25 years in sales, and then 8 years prior to that as an athlete, in how to drive home information so that it resonates.
I think one thing you also do really well is tell stories. I don't know. Greg Amundsen used to say, if you tell it with a story, I'll remember it forever. So I think that's one thing that really captivates your audience. And it's not a matter of the fact that you're talking about Fraser or Froning or Tia. It's your stories are just, you're involved, you're engulfed in it. And it's just, for me, it was just entertaining. I was in it. So that's,
that's awesome. I was so nervous going that one on the waves. I was so nervous. I was shocked. I mean, there must have been 500 people.
Yeah, you filled the ice skating rink for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was, it's interesting for me. I think back when I was a kid, and I was terrible in public speaking. As a matter of fact, I was in 7th grade, and I had a speech teacher, Miss Fields, and it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare that getting up in front of your class and having to speak in front of them. I struggled with it for a really long time. And it's interesting that now I find myself in front of people all the time. And I think that it's interesting when I think back from 7th grade and how awful those experiences are. And then from Watt on the Waves and getting in front of, several hundred people and coming up with unique content, those 3 different speeches that I gave, it comes down to preparation. You've got to be prepared. And the key is people have all the same expectation. They want to have very simple content that's relatable. And a lot of times, if you come in with a bunch of scientific jargon, people don't remember. It doesn't resonate. And what you have to do is you have to put it in very simplistic terms. But more importantly, if you can dovetail that content with a story that they'll remember, then they'll never forget. They'll never forget the content because they'll remember the story. And that's the key. It's interesting that my course with, as a subject matter expert, with CrossFit, I told these stories, and that was very unusual for a course to be telling stories. But now the level ones and level twos have adopted that concept that they're not following that script format anymore, and it's more authentic.
Yeah, being on the staff for nearly 7 years, I can tell you that I've seen the transition of when it was very much like, this is what you have to say, versus throw in, there's parts of it where it's like, add your story here. And I love it because it's fun for me as the deliverer of the message to be able to throw in a true story that I believe in, and is real to me. And what you said, that a lot of the guests, we've had some of the best coaches in the world on, and they all say the same thing. It needs to be simple. No one cares. Yeah. The truth is, I don't care about lactic acid and what's happening in my body. I want it to flush and show me how to do it. And if that means pressing PVC over my head for 2 minutes after handstand push-ups, cool.
I think that that's the key, is that you have to sit. So like I will tell people, it's like, when we talk about these lactate clearance workouts, this concept has been around for 100 years, and it is applicable to any movement that we want. Well, the problem is that if you cite a bunch of examples, people still don't get it. But if I turn around and I say, no, a lactate clearance workout is taking two movements that are virtually the same. One movement's a very high intensity, the other is very low intensity. So a good example is running. Take a running sprint that creates fatigue, and then what you're going to do is clear that fatigue in a slow recovery jog. Sprint into a jog. That's a lactate clearance workout, and you can apply it towards any movement. You just have to follow the same parameters. It has to be simple, but you have to tell a story. So in their head, they're like, oh, he said running sprint into running jog. Create fatigue, clear fatigue. Got it.
And, I think funny, I remember your stories. You involved, I think, Spencer Hendel talking about handstand push-ups, and Matt Frazier talking about how he couldn't find the right pace on the jog, I believe you were saying. So it's like those stories, from January are still in my head. It's really
wild.
It's really impressive. Now, you mentioned earlier you were coaching CrossFit for free for years, and you took advice from Jason Khalifa. Now, at the time, Khalifa was probably not even 30. How hard was it, as a 50-year-old man who's had this incredible success, to look at someone like Khalifa, granted he's been successful, and heed his advice?
I mean, that's the thing, is that my judge of character, just being in sales and personalities, I've gotten pretty good at reading people, and Jason is one that I spent a tremendous amount of time with back in the beginning, and we talked a lot. I have a lot of respect for just his educational background, as well as his forward-looking thinking. His concepts are very advanced, and I have a lot of really, even to today, I have very good conversations with him about what he's doing, what I'm doing. And so I respect him in that way. The thing that resonated when he spoke to me about having two jobs and myself thinking that I can pull them off, I never really thought about what it would be like if I had all of that time just to one position. And I got to thinking about it. Every time when I would go from coaching in the CrossFit space back into my regular job, I would have to almost take a warm down out of my CrossFit position and then restart my thinking into my job. And I would have a lot of lag between those. And when I eliminated my full-time job and went straight into CrossFit, I no longer had that lag. And what I was able to do was build upon that creativity on levels that I've never seen before. And that happened immediately.
So there's people listening that are probably in a similar position as you. They want to be a full-time CrossFit coach, or maybe they already own an affiliate. And my advice has always been, because I've never had a, quote unquote real job. It's always been fitness one way or the other. So I'm always like,
this is a real job. This is a real job.
I get it. But, I'll have you talk to my mom after this and you can explain that to her. Um, so
Right.
what's your advice to them? It's easy to say, well, yeah, of course, it was Chris Hinshaw and he's this and that, but they didn't see the years of free training, So what's your advice to them? I mean, you've basically given it in that you can't really be 100% devoted to two things. But what else would you tell them?
So it's interesting. I think back when I was when I was doing it for free, I took a lot of heat for what I was doing. I mean, this was back, so take end of 2012, 2013. I was talking about pacing. I had Jason Khalifa do a 20-mile run 3 weeks before the CrossFit Games. 20 miles.
What was the
that
point
was
of that?
Unheard of. One of the things, I wanted to build up his confidence and show him that he was able to do something that was seemingly impossible and to do it with relative ease. I wanted that confidence boost that he is not the same person that was ever going to the games in the past. Because Jason, one of the things that I had to address was his lack of confidence. I mean, here's a guy that was finishing last in every endurance event at the CrossFit Games, and he's tried through his influence of finding people and resources to turn that around. And when I was working with him, it became very clear that was something that sat in the back of his mind all the time. I'm still going to go to the CrossFit Games and finish last. And when he did that 20-mile run, he realized that he did the seemingly impossible. But more importantly, the next week, I gave him a workout that is called Yasso's 800. It's a marathon predictor workout. It's 10 by 800 meters, where the rest is a 1-to-1 work to rest ratio. And he averaged 2 minutes and 57 seconds for those 10 800s.
So sub 6 minute mile pace. That's incredible.
Yeah, for a 2. Right. And so part of it is that I wanted to give him workouts that were considered the peak of the peak within the running world. I'm not talking about like CrossFit space. I'm talking about the most extreme, because I had to break him of that confidence barrier. And when he did that 257, that really showed him that this guy's ready. I'm ready to get after it. That was very controversial back in 2013, what I was doing. It was very controversial, but part of it is that I know the value of slow twitch fibers. I know the value of your aerobic system. And I knew that was his biggest weakness. And so from a physiological standpoint, I needed to fix that. So I had the physical issue, but I also had that mental, emotional issue that I had to cure.
We'll flash forward a few weeks, and then we have a half marathon row. He winds up winning.
Yep. So it was there was a 2K into a half marathon, and then there was also, they had a swim earlier in that day, and he had worked on through me his swimming, and he finished out that first day in first place by a substantial margin. Matter of fact, that year there was 4 endurance events, and he won 3 out of 4 and got a third in the fourth one. And the burden running won, and then there was that Naughty Nancy that he got third behind. It was Josh Bridges and Froning, and then Khalifa. But that was, just because you have a good performance, and I'm so grateful for Jason, not only given the opportunity, but the fact that he delivered. And then that year I coached Garrett Fisher, who placed 5th, and Neil Maddox. That does not prove that you have anything. Just because you have 3 athletes that do something unique, it doesn't mean anything. I met Camille in June of 13 and programmed her. And then she won the games in 14, and that still didn't mean anything. What I was trying to do was really find my own unique space within the CrossFit community, but I wanted to prove that I had something of value. And so I was constantly, honestly, trying to sabotage my own history in the sport by going out and getting more difficult athletes. You know, like when I brought on Rich Froning, I knew I could make Rich a better runner because he had just walked in that 333 event. But just because you make him a good runner, what if I ruined him as a CrossFitter? Same thing, Frazier. You know, I met Frazier at the end of 14 and started working with him, and I knew I could make him a better runner, but what if I ruined him as a weightlifter? And so I would take on any athlete. The bigger the challenge, the better. I mean, 2 years ago, well, last year I had Cara Webb for 9 months. Here's an athlete that her fastest mile time was 6 minutes and 43 seconds, 6 minutes, 43 seconds. And 5 weeks before the CrossFit Games, she ran a 5:47 mile. I mean,
you're taking a minute off an elite athlete's mile time in months.
Yeah, who finished. Yeah, I mean, this is, you know, podium athlete at the games, and you would think, how on earth do you get Cara Webb to be able to run sub 6? Well, I mean, she did all the work, but it was a challenge to whether or not it could be done. And that's what I've always done. I've never sat back and go, oh, my claim to fame was Jason Khalifa in 2013, and he got, second place at the CrossFit Games. I am constantly finding and pushing my own evolution as a coach. And I think a lot of times coaches, they sit back and they rest on something that happened, so long ago, it almost doesn't count.
And I think you can make that statement about any career even, right? There's probably, when you were in sales 15 years in, you're not like, how can I become a better salesperson? You're just like, I'm making money. This is going great. Part of it is...
Well, not me. That's how I got into lots of trouble, boy. I mean, part of it is that you want to always be innovative. And I think that the juice for me is that constant quest for better. Not only in terms of my own evolution as an individual, but also my work product. That's why in my seminar, I give away. I mean, I give away all of my information, everything. The only thing that I hold back are athletes' performances because, they don't share them. That's not my information to share. Right. But people always ask me, they're like, wow, you give away everything in your course. Like, where's your intellectual property? I go, well, first of all, if I give everything away, it forces me to go out and learn something else. And honestly, I think that my intellectual property is the writing of workouts. That's what I do. I mean, I write a lot of workouts. But if I didn't give away content, I think that I would no longer evolve.
You remind me of stand-up comedians, because the best stand-up comedians take their closing act and then put it in the front of their act, because that forces them to create a new ending to their show. Now, this day and age, you're well-renowned. Everyone knows you. How hard was it for you to convince Khalifa in 2013 to do some of the crazy things you were telling him to do? You went from, I'm coaching for free, you find Jason Khalifa, I assume, because you're both out in the, NorCal area. And I don't think it goes from, hey, nice to meet you, go run 20 miles.
Well, so here was the thing is that, so I had been at Santa Cruz Central for 3 years. And then I realized that there's more than one CrossFit gym. And I was driving an hour. So I looked online and I found NorCal CrossFit. And at that time, this was in 2011, they were not doing any cardio in the programming. It was all barbell work, and I was running 2 times a week on the side. So that was a good place for me to go. I met Jay a year after being there. And interestingly enough, he called me a month after meeting him. So this was in late 2012. And the reason why I was so successful with him was because in that initial call, he told me, he said 2 things. I want to know what you're going to be doing. I want to know your direction. But he said, I will never question you. I will never question it. And I will always do whatever you ask of me. And so those two things of not questioning the direction I'm going and always doing what I ask made him coachable. I mean, it really defined what I'm looking for in athletes. And honestly, there are a lot of athletes that are out there, especially in the CrossFit space, that are just not coachable.
Well, I was going to ask you, have you had to deal with that?
Oh yeah, no, it's part of the thing is that you need athletes that are honest with their level of commitment. For example, if an athlete comes to you and says, I want to win the CrossFit Games, well, I know what it takes to do that. And if they don't want to put the work in, they don't want to make that commitment, there is a mismatch in that relationship, because you're telling me one thing, but your actions are something different. Now, I much rather have an athlete that says, look, I just want to finish in the top 10, or better yet, I just want to finish in the top 20. Now that changes a lot. That changes a lot. Part of it is that athletes, they're not honest with their ambitions.
Now, with the change to the games, is that changing how you're programming for your athletes? We don't know what's to come, but I think there's some speculation that day one's going to have this major cut, and you can assume it's going to be some sort of long, distance run, bike, or swim where 1,000 people can go at it. Does that change?
Jay,
what's that?
I agree with you. I think it's going to be a long run. I think that it's going to be a 5K.
It has to be a mass start, right? It has to be something where 1,000 people, 3, 2, 1, we're taking the top 100. So is that changing now what you're doing for your athletes? It's speculation.
So, so the way I write workouts now, what I'm doing is I'm so a lot of the athletes that I work with, I've been with them for a long time. So the trust is there, the confidence between the two of us are there, the precision in the workouts that I write are there. So what I do is I want to empower them. Part of what you want to do with an athlete is that you always have an underlining game plan. You always have a primary objective, but you also have a lot of indirect things that are happening in parallel. Because again, what we're looking for is efficiency in the programming. We don't want to just accomplish one thing and then move to another. If I can accomplish 10 things in parallel, now I am compressing the learning curve. And that's what I do, is that with these elites. And so part is that I am writing workouts now that are based upon time domain. So Fraser, for example, has workouts that target a 2 to 3 minute time domain, a 5 to 6 minute time domain, a 10 to 12 minute time domain, and then a 20 plus minute time domain. And what he gets is 3 different workouts for each time domain. One is running on the air runner, one is running on the open road, and one is running on the track. And they're all personalized for him. They all have precise distances. They have precise time domains for those distances and precise recovery time domains, whether it's passive recovery or an active recovery. And the progression is self-guided. So the workouts get more and more difficult as you move down the page. And each time he does a workout, I will update all of his paces that waterfall below it. But what I look at is how fast is he moving down that list, because the workouts get progressively more challenging. So, for example, he would not be able to do the workouts on the bottom of the spreadsheet. They're just too difficult. So what I do is, where are you and how many jumps down the page are you taking? And that tells me a lot about his frame of mind.
That sounds like a lot of work for you. I mean, granted for Matt as well, but for you, how much time does that take for every individual athlete on a weekly basis?
Well, it takes a while. I mean, I spend a lot of time on it, but honestly, I love writing workouts, and the way they really do pop into my head, and I like creating almost like it's like a puzzle. Um, one of the things that was interesting, I mean, just a puzzle, like I like numbers and I like matching of things, and I like making sure that workouts have this focus or intent behind them, with this purpose. And one of the things that we look at in our sport, 21-15-9, what does it even mean? It doesn't mean anything,
Right, the
really. It's
random
just
numbers
numbers.
that Coach Glassman came up with.
Right, but imagine if we're doing Fran and we have a 21-15-9, and what we're going to do is we're going to do 21-15-9, but we're going to do it this way. What I want you to do is I want you to actually do the 21 using your slow twitch aerobic fibers. What I want is I don't want the weight to be heavy, and I don't want you to move that barbell fast. I just want you to move, and I want it to be aerobic. Then when we get into the 15, what I want is that I want it to be glycolytic. I want it to be fast twitch two-way muscle fiber. So we're going to go to a different barbell weight, but this time you're going to have to use those intermediate fibers. And then for your 9, we're going to go to even a heavier weight because we want to exercise those fastest of the fast, those 2B fibers. Now, 21-15-9 actually has some meaning. That's what I like writing. That's what I want people to be. I mean, that's what I have my athletes doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm immediately thinking about the weights I would have to use in Fran to accomplish that task. Probably significantly lighter than Matt, but it'd be relative to me. Now, you coach.
But what if you just do 75, 95, and 115?
That's exactly what I was thinking with 135 on the nines, but that's where my head went.
There you go.
Now,
yeah,
you coach so many of the game's athletes. Are you able to stay objective and not? I had Dallin on recently, Dallin Pepper, and our mutual friend Matt Torres. You know Matt from Brute Strength.
Yeah, I do.
Coaches like all those guys that train together for the kids. And I asked Dallin, joking, I'm like, who's his favorite? Are you able to do this without biasing who you favor as far as coaching?
Yeah, I don't look at when I'm looking at I never see them as a grouping or a pool. Never. I always look upon them as individuals, and they're a puzzle for me. Just because Katrin does one thing and Cara does a different thing, or Camille does something else, they're apples and oranges. If I try and create similarities between them, that is not the highest and best use of their time as individuals. You have to remember that these athletes are at the tip of the spear. I mean, these are ones that you can't just have this generic programming. They're anomalies. They're not the ones that are in general population. And so I have to find things that are truly unique and individualized for them. That's what I have to do.
So just because Katrin posts a post on Instagram that it's your birthday, you don't start thinking about her like, I want to make her the champion this year.
I want to make them all the best they could possibly be.
Yeah. Now,
that's what I really truly do. I mean, I think about it. It's like, I mean, when I had my first conversation with Cara Webb, so we started, so that was in 1817. So this was in October of 2017. And she told me, she says, I want to break 6. My number one goal is I want to break 6 minutes for a mile. This is now, she had just gotten back from the games. And that's what she tells me. That's in my very first conversation with her. So does Katrin or Sarah or Tia, their information is irrelevant, because I have a specific task that she wants to do that. And so for me, it's total. I don't even think about it, to be honest. That's why when I look at the workouts and the things that I write, it's generally around the individual themselves. Now, if I take it for general population, those workouts are much more generic. Those ones are safer. they're less challenging. There's more a greater margin of error, because part of it is that I believe that in order to have solid retention, you've got to challenge people, and they have to feel that they've been challenged. But if they're not successful all the way to that final rep, then they're not going to come back.
Of all the athletes, who under your guidance has made the most progress as far as where they were to where they are currently?
Wow. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, the progress has been, I mean, Katrin. So, what's interesting is that Katrin, I got to know Katrin in 2013. So she reached out to Khalifa, sent him an email and asked him if he would be interested in coaching her. And Jason responded back by saying he doesn't coach people, and he just doesn't do that, especially one-on-one anymore. And she writes back and she says, well, but I really am mostly interested in the endurance programming that you did, and if you would be willing to help me with that. And so Jason, who copies me on this email, said, well, actually, I don't do my endurance programming, and I've copied my coach, Chris Hinshaw, here. Maybe the two of you can get together. Katrin immediately writes me and says, I just want you to know that all I was trying to do was get your email. And I'm not interested in him coaching. I only wanted you. And which was cool because she was 20 years old at the time. And interestingly enough, I mean, her mile time has improved over a minute. She is, in my opinion, one of the fastest endurance athletes, the best in the sport. And so I'm really proud of her. I mean, all of the athletes are just unique in the way. Just take Tia. Tia struggled with her closing speed, her cycle time of movement. Her definition of intensity was not truly high intensity. And so every athlete it had a unique set of characteristics that is where I was measuring the improvement. And that's how I was judging myself. So who improved the best? The variables are just so different. And again, I don't think of them as a group. They're always just individualized. I do love the fact that Fraser came from an Olympic weightlifting background. And I love the fact that when I met with him, I said, are you concerned that you're going to get weaker by doing a 2-day-a-week run program? And he told me, he says, you know what, Chris? He said, I never want to finish second ever again. I don't. And I'm willing to knock myself off the podium, even out of the top 10, in order to fix this. Because if I don't fix it, I'm never going to win. And I like that. And I like the fact that he actually has gotten stronger while doing this.
That's a great mindset. That's just so impressive to hear. I think you could talk about this forever, as could I, but I don't want you to leave without telling me more about the trail run that you're responsible for out in Kauai. When we initially tried to get on our interview, you were 6-hour time difference instead of 1 or 2. And you've done some amazing things out there. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, thank you. So the Kela Foundation is a nonprofit organization over in Kauai. They're the organization that puts on the Ultimate Hawaiian Trail Run. And yeah, I'm sorry about missing the last, when we were having originally scheduled. I went over there to help out. Heidi and I went over. We just bought one-way tickets, and we wanted to stay for as long as we could, have positive impact. What they do, their primary charter is to give the kids on the island of Kauai an alternative to what has traditionally been, drugs and alcohol abuse as they age. And there's now over 600 kids in the program, and the program provides CrossFit to these kids for free. The organization actually picks the kids up from school, takes them to the gym, trains them, coaches them, feeds them, and then takes them home. And it's truly driven by charitable donations. And so we did, some fundraisers, but it's a cause that Heidi and I have been involved in from the beginning. And it's interesting when you give. And I've done a lot of volunteering, but I get rewards from it in terms of accolades from the public, right? If someone wins the games, when you give to a charitable nonprofit that especially kids, one of the things that you quickly realize is that you don't expect anything in return, nothing. And you're just doing it because this is just what you feel like and you want to do. It's your choice to do it. And you're going to give without any expectation. And when you're able to do that, and this is one of the things that's very addictive for me, is that feeling of giving without expectation of return is a level of reward that I've never felt before. And I do feel for these kids. I do feel for these Hawaiian families, the island families, and what's been happening. And I want to do what I can to help them. But the reward in terms of personal satisfaction in that effort it's been immensely rewarding for me and Heidi. So if anybody does want to contribute, one of the things that you could either do is you can go over and do the trail run, which is middle of September. And then we're also planning a very unique camp that is going to be coached by elite level CrossFit coaches and then champions from the CrossFit Games. We're going to be having it at Mayhem, and all of the money that is raised will go into the foundation as well as into Rich and Hillary Froning's primary charity, which is Mustard Seed Ranch, both kids organizations. So that camp's going to be something cool. We're looking at doing that either in December or March at CrossFit Mayhem. So that will be cool.
That sounds really amazing. And it's funny to hear you say you're addicted to this. It's like there are worse things to be addicted to than helping other human beings, right? And I've heard, I've never been to the trail run, but my good friend MDV, who works with Jason, he's been going for years, and he always tries to get me out there. So maybe this will be the year. I was just on Kauai. It's my favorite island, and I'd love to help out with that.
I'm telling you, it will give you chills to just watch and see what's going on. I never was aware of. It's interesting that we all see what we want to see, and I have been going. I mean, the Ironman was held in Kona. I've been going to Hawaii since I was a kid, and racing, and I've never seen drugs or anything. And the founder, Aaron Hoff. I was going to a beach. We were doing a cliff jump off of this cliff into the ocean called Shipwrecks. And I told him, I said, I've been coming here a long time and I've never seen what you're talking about. This was in the first year. And he says, well, that's because you see what you want to see. And you see coconuts and Mai Tais and palm trees. And so we pull into this beach and he says, I'll just show you right now that you see what you want to see. And he, right there on the beach, it was, groups of people right as we exited the parking lot, and then along the tree line as we were walking to the cliff, and it's just in broad daylight, and it's shocking. And now when I go, I can't shake that. I see it all the time, and I feel for the kids that are caught up in that. And I would like to give them, or at least make my best effort to give them an option, to give them a choice. And, some make the choice that's, the wrong one. But if they have an alternative, then you know what? You always had a choice. And I love the fact that they're giving them a choice of fitness. This is one of the things that, it's interesting, all of these changes that are happening in the sport. Glassman has done an amazing amount of work to help these kids over there and never once has done anything. Without his contribution to help, the success of this program would still be in its infancy. What he has done is on a level of such massive significance, and his generosity as far as helping has it's interesting that that's something that he doesn't even bother to share, but it's truly remarkable, his level of giving.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very biased program in favor of Coach Glassman because it's changed my life. So whenever people talk badly and complain, I'm just, you can't explain to them that they have no idea what the man has brought to this world and what he does that goes unmentioned. And, all while founding a new sport and running $1 billion company. He makes some crazy decisions, but he's also a visionary.
Yep.
And there's probably a lot of crazy decisions that brought us CrossFit too. Now, and speaking of,
yep.
there have been some changes that have affected you recently, right? We're no longer a specialty course, we're a preferred course. How is that impacting you in the aerobic capacity seminar?
For us, it hasn't. I mean, so we had our own course before CrossFit, and it's just reverting back. For us, it just gives you a lot more latitude in how you manage your course, how you manage your content, how you evolve your course, the number of courses that you do. It just gives us a lot more flexibility. I do worry about the model long term, being truthful about it. I think that if they're truly opening up and this, courses to the whole population by paying the annual $5,000 fee, and yes, okay, they have to go through an approval process, but the fact is that if there's one weightlifting course now, and let's say there's 5 down the road, is the assumption going to be that there's going to be 5 times the quantity of participants now going to weightlifting courses? Or are the weightlifting courses that are being filled today going to get cut, by fifths? So instead of having, 40 people in a course, unfortunately, you're going to have 8 people in the course.
I mean, I think the benefit for you is you've established yourself as the expert. There's not going to be Jason's aerobic capacity course that competes with what you're putting out there. And everything you've discussed in the last hour is why you will stay on top.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's why I feel like for me, I've always evolved my course. Always. I've always kept it on leading edge. I also teach them all. I mean, part of it is that I want to know where the sport is, like what's driving the sport today. Where are, the levels of interest as far as the coaches, the affiliate owners, and the athletes that are attending my course. What is their hot buttons? I mean, for example, I added pacing into my course about a year ago, as far as not just the skill of pacing, but how do you pace a workout that you've never done before? Like, how do you do it? Like, coaches will openly say, oh, just find your maximum sustainable intensity and stay there. Okay, where do you do that? How do I judge that? How do I reflect on it to see whether or not I did it correctly or not? How do I own that as an athlete? And I added that in there because for me, I didn't know that was a question. And I realized that a lot of people, pacing is a huge buzzword in the sport, but for example, do you pace everything? Well, if it's a 6-second max effort sled sprint, you're not going to pace it. So at what point in time do you actually start pacing, and why? And I evolved that into the sport because I realized it had value and that there was interest. And I think that my approach as far as sharing all of my latest things that I've been working on and what actually drives adaptation keeps the course fresh. Like the people that went 2 years ago, that, if they came today, it's a totally different course. It's more advanced because, let's face it, our sport's evolving rapidly.
Yours is one of the handful of courses, if not the only one, where every time I ask someone what they thought, they're like, you need to go check it out. And if CrossFit ever gives me a weekend off, I will be there.
I'd love to have you, man.
And Watt on the Waves, you talked for probably 3 to 4 hours, and I assume it's a lot of what went on there. And I tell you what, my wife and I, as soon as we left, we're like, next time he's around, we need to go check that out. That was that good. And I hate running. I hate all the stuff you're teaching as far as the monostructural stuff, but that's why I need to do it too. But it's just listening to you.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, part of it is, like I said, is like I'm trying to make it a good experience for everybody. And I don't use notes during mine. I look at the audience and I look at, whether or not they're getting it, and I can either pick up or slow down. And part of it is I do also recognize people don't like to run. And one of the things that I do in the first workout is we run. And because I've changed the format of it to focus on a skill and not necessarily intensity, essentially creating a game out of it, people love it. And it shows them that if a workout is programmed properly, running is actually enjoyable. And that's what I want people to recognize is, you can do workouts that are not always focused on the biggest and the baddest and the strongest. Maybe we should focus on skills so that the person who just walked into the gym for the very first time has a chance to shine. And that's what drives me, is that I realize that, if I'm always focused on programming around Rich Froning or Matt Frazier, I'm leaving 99.9% of the people behind. And that's what you realize when you come to the course. You realize that what he's doing is writing not just running workouts, but weightlifting, gymnastic workouts that are for general population, the people that are just looking for better fitness.
Very, very, very true. Rumor on the street, and I'm going to let you go in a minute. Rumor on the street is your favorite cheat meal is Ruffles potato chips. Is that true?
It is, actually. I could go right now into the pantry and get you a bag of Ruffles, low fat with sea salt, but I got to have it with onion dip. If I have that, that's my death row meal, actually. I want some onion dip and a bag of chips.
Death row, you're still going low fat though? I mean, at that point, are you just like, get me some regular chips?
You know what? You always got to have hope. Yeah. You got to have some hope that maybe.
Was that what you craved when you finished the triathlon? You just salt? Is that why it still resonates so much with you?
That's funny because so in the Ironman in Hawaii, Kona, we would park our car near the start finish line down by the pier. And we would park our car in a shopping center that was probably a quarter mile away. And in that shopping center was a Kentucky Fried Chicken. And my post-Ironman meal was a bucket of original chicken. And I would sit down and that's what I would eat. And it was, people would say, oh, you can get sick. I didn't get sick ever. And I'd eat the whole thing. Yep, that was my post-meal.
You mentioned earlier you want to give back to CrossFit because it got you healthy again. Are you healthier now as a CrossFit athlete than you were when you were competing in the Ironman?
That's a great question. Yes, in terms of health, absolutely. I remember doing. So I was a decent runner, low 30 minutes for a 10K, and I remember doing the Beta Breakers in San Francisco, which had about 70,000 people in it. And I had to laterally move to get around people. And I, every now and then, would get bumped by somebody on my side, and it almost knocked me over. Like I was really good at going in one continuous direction. But if I had to move laterally, there's no way I was going to break. I couldn't do those moves. And that is not an issue today. I really, truly regret I never understood why I didn't have finishing sprints, finishing kicks. I never understood why, if a run had hills, that I would get dropped going up hills, why I didn't have any power output. I never understood it. And the mistake is that I didn't actually develop my fast twitch fibers. Now, granted, I didn't have a lot of them, but I still had 12% of my capacity was fast twitch. And you know what? They were passive because I never trained them. I could have been better. I could have been better. And that's where I've learned from CrossFit is that, especially with the elites, is that I don't want them to make those mistakes. I don't want them to look back and go, man, I could have been better. I could have been better. I want them to take advantage of every opportunity to maximize performance because their window is so short. When it's over, it's over. And so I look back now, I without a doubt, because of CrossFit, I am healthier and more fit. And I wish that I could have had the same ability back then because I would have been better and I would have been more durable.
Would you have won the Hawaiian Ironman?
It's hard to say. I mean, there's so many variables over there. It's just hard to say because I know how hard I was training, and I know that when the gods came down and handed out genetic gifts, my lung capacity is 50% larger. My body fat back then was 3.4. I had a VO2 in the movement of running of 89 milliliters per kilogram per minute. My slow twitch, I've had biopsies in my shoulder, my legs, 88% slow twitch. I mean, I was made for moving fast for long amounts of time. And I wonder if I had fully developed my arsenal of fibers, what could have been. And I'll never know. I'll never know. But I had a good run. That's the thing, is I had a good run. And for that, I had such a good time.
Well, I think you're very similar to me in that you wouldn't change anything because you wouldn't be where you are today without everything you've done. Last question that I ask every guest is, do you have any book that you recommend the listeners check out? Doesn't have to be about aerobic capacity, but just a book that you've recommended over the years of your life.
A Man in Full.
Who's the author of that? You know?
Well, I can't remember.
When are we going to get a book from you?
Oh boy. So it's interesting that, I do a lot of just writing, and what I do when I write things is that I throw things into folders, and these folders actually are chapters. And, I was asked about a year ago whether or not, I'd be interested in just writing a book to put all of this together into one concise space. And I'll tell you what my problem is. I don't feel like I've got it, figured out. I don't feel like I have it down yet. I feel like I need to learn more. And maybe that's just my own insecurities, but I feel like there's another piece out there that I need to put into the puzzle so that it's complete. But I think about it all the time. I really do, because I don't write blog articles because I spend so much time programming of workouts and analyzing athletes' strengths and weaknesses. But yeah, it would be a very interesting piece, just in the sense that the way I assess individuals and how I prescribe to create adaptation is somewhat unique. And I think that our market, especially for, I'll tell you a story. So I was with this potential sponsor, and this is a big name company, massive, one of the huge company. And this guy sits down and he says, I'm not sure, why you're here. I don't understand what the purpose that you can provide our company, that we work with a lot of Olympian level coaches, and you're a CrossFit coach. Matter of fact, you're only a specialist within the CrossFit space. I don't see where the value is. And I told him, I said, I agree. You guys have Olympian level coaches, and I have no interest in coaching an Olympian level athlete. I don't. What my interest is that I'm interested in providing to the fitness enthusiast, the recreational athlete, the one that wants to go out and run 1 to 2 times per week. And what I want to do is I want to give them the best performance and the best experience that they can in their local 5K or 10K event. That's what I'm interested in. And what's interesting is that I'm the best in the world at doing that. And that represents 99.9% of the population. That's what we do in CrossFit, that we are targeting the people that don't want to win in the Olympics. These are ones that are targeting fitness. And it represents 99.9% of the people. And that's what makes CrossFit so amazing, is that there is a sport for the athletes that before there wasn't one. If you weren't on the extremes in terms of endurance or speed, strength, and power, you eventually were removed. And the same thing with coaches. We have a chance to really truly create greatness for ourselves because it represents 99.9% of the population out there. This population wants to do a variety of things. And you know what? If you can provide something within that space that drives adaptation more efficiently and effectively, then you know what? You will find some greatness for yourself.
Well, I think that's a great way to end this interview. That was, profound amongst many things you said. That was truly, I'm motivated right now. I almost want to go out and run, Chris. So
come to the course and let me trick you into having a good time into that run. Yeah, I'll make it fun.
I will do that. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate all you've done for the community. And I look forward I would love to be a part of helping out your foundation in the next year and in the future.
Love it, man. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's a nice interview. A lot of good stuff too. Never been talked about. Thank you again.
Thank you.